This is Rainy Night Horrors. Outside, the storm brews, and with it comes something darker. Every drop masks a sound, every shadow holds a shape. You're not imagining it. You're hearing the truth. Listen closely. It's already here. The summons came near 3 in the morning, not a polite rap, but a frantic battery against the wood, shaking the very frame of my front door. Solitude was my only companion in the house. I sat amidst the shadowed living room, a book lying forgotten in my lap, as the heavens wept against the glass. Hours the storm had raged, a liquid curtain descending, warping the familiar world beyond the panes into something alien. Again, the assault upon the door, more violent this time, a desperate triad of blows that jolted me from my seat. A cold fist clenched around my heart. No sane soul navigated the world at such an hour, let alone through this tempest. Setting the book aside, I rose, the old floorboards groaning their protest beneath my weight. Toward the window I crept, parting the heavy drape just enough to peer into the maelstrom. Lamplight, jaundiced and weak, struggled through the downpour, offering scant illumination of the drowned lawn. Water pooled, transforming the driveway into a miniature churning river. Another volley of impacts. "Mercy! Please, let me in. I require aid," a man's voice, frayed with terror. Through the rain-streaked glass, I spied a figure adrift in the street's center. A man, it seemed initially, clad in what appeared to be sodden formal wear, dark fabric clinging, hair plastered to his skull. Even across the distance, his tremors were visible. "Please," the cry echoed again. "My motor car failed. I only need your telephone." My fingers instinctively sought the reassuring weight of the mobile phone in my pocket. A profound wrongness settled over me. The hour, the circumstance, it all felt discordant, a dissonant chord in the night symphony. Who journeyed at 3 ante-meridiem through such elemental fury? And why linger in the street's deluge instead of seeking shelter on the porch from which he'd hammered? A glance confirmed the time on the tall clock dominating the room. 2 minutes past 3. Its pendulum swung, a metronome counting out seconds that suddenly felt unnervingly loud in the stillness. When my gaze returned to the window, the blood in my veins turned to ice. The shape in the street remained, yet it had altered, still vaguely anthropomorphic, but hideously skewed. The proportions defied nature, limbs elongated, torso unnaturally slender, and the face, where features should reside, there was only an unsettling smoothness, a lacuna of perfect, impenetrable dark. I recoiled from the window, stumbling backward, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. An illusion, surely. Exhaustion, the rain's distorting lens. It had to be. Then the pounding erupted anew, but this time, impossibly, from the rear entrance. I spun, nearly tangling in my own feet. The kitchen lay shrouded in shadow, save for the dim spillover from the living room. Bang, bang, bang! The front door answered immediately. Then, 3 more concussions at the back. No corporeal being could traverse the distance between those 2 points with such velocity. Panic propelled me into the kitchen, fingers fumbling for light switches. Fluorescent tubes flickered, then blazed, bathing the room in stark, sterile white. Through the small window above the sink, a flicker of movement in the backyard, a dark silhouette vanishing behind the shrubs. My hands trembled as I retrieved my phone. Dialing emergency services became a trial, my digits betraying me, forcing 3 attempts before the numbers aligned. More pounding, now seemingly from every direction at once. Each door, every window, a simultaneous cacophony. The noise was overwhelming. The walls themselves seemed to thrum with the impacts. Finally, a connection. 911, state your emergency. There's something, attempting entry. My voice fractured. Address is 3487 Oakhaven Street. Urgently. Sir, can you describe this individual? Another barrage of impacts made me flinch. I cannot. It resembled a man initially, but now, a difficult swallow. Now it is changed. It lacks a face. Please, dispatch assistance. Units are en route, the dispatcher assured. Remain on the line. Are your doors and windows secured? A rapid mental check. Yes, all locked. I habitually verify before. The world plunged into absolute black. Every light extinguished simultaneously, silencing the house's low hum. Even the streetlights outside succumbed. Only the pallid glow of my phone screen pierced the oppressive darkness. Sir, are you still present? The power failed. I whispered into the receiver. The entire street is dark. The pounding ceased. The abrupt silence that followed was almost more terrifying than the preceding din. Rain persisted, a steady drumming on the roof, but all else was quiet. No traffic, no wind, no approaching sirens. Then I perceived it, a wet, dragging sound emanating from the living room, like something saturated being pulled across the floorboards. It's inside. I breathed into the phone. Dear God, something is inside my house. I retreated into a kitchen corner, instinctively trying to diminish my presence. The sliding noise crept closer. In the phone's meager luminescence, a dark form navigated past the kitchen doorway. It moved low, almost crawling, yet the motion was disturbingly unnatural, too fluid, too sinuous. Units 4 minutes out. The dispatcher's voice sounded distant, detached. Can you reach a room you can secure? The cellar, I whispered. I must disconnect. Please, hurry. Ending the call, I activated the phone's flashlight. Its bright beam sliced the darkness, a comfort I almost instantly regretted. For now, I saw the trails marring my floor, long glistening streaks leading from the living room, converging toward the kitchen. They shone wetly, but the liquid wasn't rainwater. It was viscous and dark, nearly black. Moving with excruciating slowness, I crept toward the basement door. Each footfall felt monumental. Floorboards complained under my weight. I froze with every creak, straining to hear. Reaching the door, I turned the handle with painstaking care. Hinges emitted a faint squeal as I pulled it open. Stairs descended into perfect Stygian blackness. Movement behind me. I whirled, flashlight beam slashing across the kitchen. For a heartbeat, I glimpsed it. Tall, emaciated, ducking behind the refrigerator. Its skin, a pallid gray, seemed to weep moisture. Those grotesquely long arms trailed upon the floor. Thought abandoned me. I fled down the cellar steps, taking them in twos and threes, nearly tumbling in my haste. I slammed the heavy door shut behind me, throwing the deadbolt my father had installed years prior, a jest then about securing his vintage wines. Never had I felt such profound gratitude. The cellar air was cold, pregnant with the smell of damp earth and mildew. Metal shelving lined the walls, laden with jars of preserves and emergency rations, their glass surfaces reflecting the flashlight beam into dancing, distorted shadows. The washer and dryer stood sentinel in a corner, inert and dark. I backed away from the stairs until my shoulders met the cold concrete of the far wall, then slid down, collapsing onto the floor. My entire frame shuddered uncontrollably. Despite the chill, sweat slicked my face. A scratching began at the basement door, delicate, tentative sounds like fingernails drawn across the grain of the wood. Then a soft thud, as if something substantial had leaned against it. "Please," a voice filtered down. It echoed the man from the street, yet warped, thin, like a poorly tuned radio. "I just need help. Let me in." I clamped my hands over my ears, a futile gesture. The voice shifted, pitching higher, then plunging lower, cycling through tones as if searching for the correct modulation. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." The phrase dissolved into a rhythmic, hypnotic chant. Other voices joined, a grotesque chorus, some guttural, some shrill, some scarcely recognizable as human. They seemed to swell not just from beyond the door, but from the very air around me. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing harder against my ears. This was unreal, impossible. A new sound pierced the horrid symphony. Sirens, their wail escalating, drawing nearer. Relief washed through me, potent and immediate. Help was arriving. The chanting abruptly stopped. Upstairs, I heard rapid, scrambling movements, like some large creature scrabbling across the floorboards. Then, silence, once more. I remained frozen, eyes shut, not daring to move, even as car doors slammed outside, even as official voices called out, even as heavy footfalls traversed the house above. Only when a fist hammered on the basement door and a voice bellowed, "Police! Is anyone down there?" did I finally lower my hands. "Yes," I croaked, my voice raw. "Yes, I'm here. The door is bolted. Are you harmed, sir?" "No, I'm all right. Just permit me a moment to unlock it." My legs were trembling reeds as I pushed myself upright, leaning heavily against the wall for support. When I finally navigated the stairs and retracted the bolt, 2 officers stood framed in the doorway, flashlights cutting beams through the darkness. More lights played upstairs. Radio static crackled. "Sir, can you recount what transpired?" one officer asked gently, guiding me up the stairs. I attempted to explain, but the words tangled, inadequate. How does one articulate the sight of such wrongness? They would deem me mad, intoxicated, hallucinating. Then my gaze fell upon the trails on the floor, those dark, viscid streaks leading from the living room, exactly as I'd seen them. Caught in the stark beam of a police torch, they seemed almost plum-colored. "What in God's name is that?" I heard one officer murmur to the other. "Uncertain. Forensics is en route." They escorted me outside. The rain had ceased, though water still dripped musically from eaves and leaves. More cruisers pulsed red and blue light across the wet street. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, huddled in small, watchful groups on the porches and lawns. An officer draped a blanket over my shaking shoulders, settling me into the back of an ambulance while a paramedic assessed my vital signs. My eyes lifted to my house. Every window remained dark, save one, my bedroom, on the upper floor. And for an infinitesimal second, I perceived movement behind the glass. Something tall, slender, with arms that dangled nearly to the floorboards. I blinked, and it vanished. No evidence of forced entry was ever discovered. Every door, every window, secured from within. The peculiar trails on the floor were analyzed as water mixed with an unidentifiable oil-based substance. The power outage was localized solely to my residence, attributed to a tripped breaker in the main panel. I sold the house within the month. Remaining there was untenable. The sensation of being observed from shadowed corners and vacant rooms became unbearable. The new occupants performed a complete renovation, stripping it back to the studs. Occasionally, I drive past. It appears altered now, somehow brighter, but never after nightfall. And if ever I find myself out late when the rain begins, I retreat directly home, securing every lock, every latch, because I'm aware of what resides in the darkness. I know what waits within the rain, donning faces that are not faces, calling in voices that are not human. And sometimes, on nights thick with storm, as I lie awake in my bed, I hear it, a knocking, not upon my door, but from within the walls themselves, faint initially, then growing louder, more insistent, accompanied by a voice, distorted and alien, pleading to be let in. I merely draw the covers tighter and pray for the dawn, because I have learned some doors are meant to remain forever closed. Some aid should never be rendered, and nothing wholesome ever comes knocking at 3 a.m. The sound ricocheted off the silence, a woman's laughter, impossibly high and sharp, striking me somewhere deep beneath the ribs. It was 11:47 p.m. My boot heel hovered inches above the grimy tile. The beam of my maglite painted a static circle of cracked linoleum in the cavernous dark of the mall. That sound had no business here, not in this derelict wing, this concrete corpse slated for the wrecking ball inside a month. Arthur Pendleton, that's me. 8 years walking the graveyard shift at the Meridian Plaza. Usually my beat kept me to the East Wing, the revitalized section where the multiplex and chain eateries still hummed with late-night life. Tonight, however, was different. Management wanted a final sweep of the West Wing, the abandoned half, before the demolition crews arrived with the dawn. A last look-see. 3 years shuttered the West Wing. Every storefront gaped behind heavy metal grates, their display windows blinded by thick sheets of opaque plastic. The air hung heavy, a miasma of stale dust and creeping mildew. My own footfalls were intruders, echoing off plaster ghosts where vibrant advertisements once screamed for attention. Only the skeletal glow of emergency exit signs provided illumination, bathing everything in a weak arterial red. There it was again, laughter, feminine, spilling from the shadowed mouth of chic boutique, a defunct clothier maybe 30 feet down the corridor. A prickle danced across my scalp, The fine hairs on my forearms lifted in unison. It wasn't just laughter. It was the texture of it, too immediate, too visceral for this mausoleum of retail. I'd handled my share of intruders, kids chasing viral fame, the destitute seeking refuge. But the West Wing? Sealed tighter than a drum for months. Every service door, every access point, chained, padlocked. I'd verified them myself when my shift began. My flashlight beam crawled up the boutique's facade. The security gate remained lowered, a formidable lattice of interwoven steel. Black plastic shrouded the display windows, meticulously taped along every edge. No tiers, no peeling corners, no ingress. A third peal of laughter, nearer this time. My throat closed tight, a knot of sudden thirst. Despite the chill air, a cold dew slicked my forehead. One step forward, then another, the rubber soles of my boots whispering obscenities against the floor. Security! My voice, surprisingly level, cut the stillness. This area is restricted. Identify yourself. Show your hands. The laughter died. Silence crashed down, absolute and suffocating. The frantic drumming in my chest seemed loud enough to echo through the dead space. I crept closer, sweeping the light across the storefront, hunting for any fissure in its defenses. The gate, solid. The plastic sheeting, inviolate. Yet something about the darkness behind those windows felt wrong, deeper, more absolute than mere shadow. A scrape resonated from within the store, heavy, like furniture dragged across concrete. Then, footfalls, measured, deliberate, approaching the gate. My hand instinctively sought the radio clipped to my belt, but a wave of professional embarrassment stayed the motion. Report. What? Giggles in a hermetically sealed shop. The boys in the break room would dine out on that for weeks. The footsteps halted, mere inches separating us, a barrier of steel and plastic between. I angled the maglite higher, attempting to pierce the gloom through the diamond-shaped gaps in the gate. Final warning, I managed. Who's in there? A soft thump against the metal, right by my light beam. I flinched back. Another thump, and another, like tentative fingers tapping one by one. The laughter resumed, transformed, no longer sharp, but low, a wet, guttural chuckle that scraped the nerves raw. Retreating, my fingers now fumbled urgently for the radio. Static erupted as I depressed the transmit button. Control, Pendleton here. West Wing. Got a possible what? Phantom? Ghost? The tapping traversed the gate, left to right. It was replaced by a sound that turned my blood to ice, the shriek of fingernails scoring steel. Pendleton, say again. The radio crackled, dissolving into static hash. Signal breaking up. Behind the gate, the black plastic membrane swelled, just slightly at first, pregnant with unseen pressure. Requesting backup, I barked into the useless radio. West Wing, immediate. More static, then a terminal click. Dead. The bulge grew, distorting. The tapping ceased. A viscous, sliding sound took its place. My flashlight beam trembled, mirroring the tremor in my hand. Arthur, a whisper. barely audible, yet perfectly clear. My name, sighed from the other side. My legs turned to water. How? The name tag my brain supplied, a flimsy shield of logic against rising panic. It offered zero comfort as I watched the plastic stretch further, thinning, taking on an unholy approximation of a human visage pressing through. Indentations formed, suggestions of eye sockets, a nasal ridge, a mouth pulled impossibly wide in a silent rictus. The black material grew taut, almost translucent under the strain. I bolted. My boots hammered the tiles, a frantic rhythm against the pursuing laughter that now seemed to emanate from the very walls, echoing, multiplying. Red exit signs pulsed like frantic heartbeats, marking my path through the oppressive dark. Rounding a corner, I collided violently with a displaced planter bench. Pain flared in my hip. The maglite spun from my grasp, cartwheeling across the floor before its beam winked out. Swearing through clenched teeth, I scrambled upright. The laughter was closer, interwoven now with footfalls, running impossibly fast, closing the distance behind me. The exit door beckoned at the corridor's end, its sign a burning ruby promise. 50 feet, maybe less. An icy filament traced the nape of my neck. Fingers, yet not fingers. Too long, too cold. I surged forward, fueled by primal terror, lungs burning. The exit sign loomed. 30 feet, 20, 10. I slammed the crash bar with both palms, bursting into the humid embrace of the night air. I didn't stop running until the fluorescent sanctuary of the East Wing security office swallowed me whole. I collapsed into the worn vinyl chair, body racked with tremors. The overnight supervisor found me like that 20 minutes later. I spun a tail, attempted break-in, chased them off. He logged it without question, told me to ride out the shift in the office. I tendered my resignation the following morning, landed a new position within the week, daytime security, downtown bank, civilized hours, better compensation, and blessedly free of condemned architecture. The demolition crews began their work on schedule. Sometimes driving past during daylight hours, I'd watch the giant machines chew away at the West Wing structure, dismantling it piece by piece. But I never returned after dark. I had no desire to discover if the laughter lingered in the ruins, no curiosity about what, precisely, had been straining against that plastic barrier. Yet, sometimes, in the solitary quiet of my own apartment, when darkness presses against the windows, I hear it, that crystalline shard of laughter, and I wrestle with the questions. If I'd lingered just seconds more, would the plastic have yielded? Would I have seen its face? Would I understand how it knew my name? Sleep is a rare visitor on those nights, and I haven't worked a night shift since. There's one detail, though, that chills me more profoundly than the laugh, the shape, the whispered name. When I returned that final morning to submit my notice, I walked past the West Wing entrance one last time under the indifferent morning sun. Everything appeared mundane, gate secure, plastic undisturbed. But there, seared onto the steel links, were 5 distinct marks, spaced like skeletal fingers, where something had clawed its way across. The metal wasn't merely scratched, it was corroded, etched deep, as if by virulent acid. And beside those marks, articulated in the same corrosive script, "Goodbye, Arthur." I walked out of Meridian Plaza and put it firmly in my rearview mirror. Still, sometimes, passing darkened storefronts late at night, my pace quickens involuntarily, and I never, ever pause if I hear laughter drifting from behind locked doors. They leveled the West Wing entirely last year, erected a multi-story parking garage on the footprint. I won't park there, won't even drive near it after sunset, because the stories have started. Whispers about laughter echoing in the concrete structure late at night. High, sharp laughter that slices through the stillness. And sometimes, they claim, if you strain your ears, you can hear it murmuring names. Names it recalls. Names it anticipates. I changed jobs again last month. Different city, clean slate, where the name Arthur Pendleton means nothing. It doesn't help. I double-check the deadbolts, sleep with a lamp burning, jolt awake drenched in sweat from dreams filled with manic laughter, because I carry a truth learned that night, a truth that irrevocably alters your perception of reality. Not all voids are empty, not all seals hold, and sometimes the entities that cackle in the darkness are collectors of names. They learn your name, and they possess infinite patience. So very patient. I am writing this as a testament, a warning. If your work casts you into desolate spaces after twilight falls, security, maintenance, whatever, heed this. Should you hear laughter where none should exist, do not seek its source. Do not announce your presence. Do not pierce the shadows with your light. Flee. Flee without hesitation, without looking back, because a glimpse is an invitation, and once it sees you, acknowledges you, it never truly lets you go. I know, because I feel it still, the phantom pressure of glacial fingertips on my neck, the sibilant whisper of my name breathed in that wet, aberrant voice, the cadence of footfalls dogging my steps when I walk deserted streets at night, closing the distance, relentlessly. My therapist diagnoses paranoia, a psychological fracture born of stress and isolation that night. But my therapist never saw the acid-etched farewell on that gate, never heard their own name invoked by the darkness. I pack my bags again next week. Another relocation, another attempt at anonymity. Futile, I suspect, because even now, as the house settles into its nightly quietude, I hear it, that familiar piercing laugh drifting up the stairwell, those heavy, deliberate footsteps ascending, coming, closer. It's time to run again, but the weariness is profound. I am so very tired of running. The above text was recovered from a laptop found in an otherwise empty apartment in Denver, Colorado. The tenant, identified as Arthur Pendleton, formerly employed as a security guard at Meridian Plaza, was reported missing 3 months ago. His current location remains unknown. The clock's phosphorescent digits bled towards the hour, 1:58 a.m. It began 3 weeks ago, this nocturnal haunting, coinciding with my maiden solar voyage into the sterile depths of Omnicorp Support Solutions. That first time, a voice dredged from some impossible place knew about Mother. how she'd left the world when I was just 12. A truth buried deeper than bone, a secret kept sacrosanct between myself and Clara, and Clara's been nothing but memory and dust for over a year now. Here I sit, ensconced in my designated pod, the monitor's pallid glow illuminating the tension etched onto my face. 1:58 a.m. My palms leave slick trails on the cheap laminate desktop. 2 minutes. The countdown never varies. Omnicorp. Pennies exchanged for purgatory. The graveyard shift premium. A scant compensation for wrestling the disembodied rage of strangers and the insistent whispers of my own private phantoms. Training was a perfunctory march through scripts and system protocols. All seemed mundane until that initial intrusion. The cubicle partitions, slabs of institutional beige, rise around me like monoliths in a sterile desert, offering neither privacy nor comfort. The vast office floor stretches out, sparsely populated at this hour. Just me, 2 other spectral figures adrift in the fluorescent haze across the room, and Silas, the supervisor, sequestered in his glass box, communing with the flickering blue light of some streaming distraction. Above, the light tubes hum, a low, incessant dirge. The recycled air, perpetually chilled, carries the faint scent of ozone and despair. 1:59 a.m. A frantic drumbeat against my ribs, loud enough, it seems, to echo in the hollow quiet. I've tried evasion, fabricated ailments, sudden emergencies. Silas's thinly veiled threats of termination hang heavier than the stale air. Attempts to trace the cause yielded nothing but the mocking finality of unknown. Attempts to record captured only digital snow, a hiss of static where the voice should be. The shrill summons of the telephone slices through the stillness. Unknown. Again. My hand trembles as the cursor hovers over the accept icon. I have to answer. It's the job. Failure invites Silas's documented displeasure. Omnicorp Support Solutions. Elias speaking. How may I direct your call? The voice returns, unchanged, like nicotine-cured leather rasped across static. Female, aged, weary. Elias Thorne, residing at 94 Arborview Lane, apartment 7C. Birthed October 2nd, 1993. Mercy General Hospital, downtown precinct. My throat constricts. Ma'am, I need the nature of your query to assist you. Your mother, the voice states flatly. The porcelain ran crimson that August morning, 2005. You were 12. Discovered the aftermath. Wearing that faded Meteors jersey, remember? The faint mustard ghost on the left sleeve, and the letter clutched in her cooling hand. You consigned its words to ashes behind the garden shed that night. A secret kept from every soul. My grip tightens on the mouse, knuckles blanching. The jersey, the fire, all true. Identify yourself, I manage, the words scraped raw from my throat. The crescent scar etching your right kneecap, a clumsy tumble from your Schwinn bicycle, age 8. The fabricated tail of a snarling stray dog served to shield the truth. A desperate, hands-free bid to capture Maya Reyes's fleeting, indifferent attention. An icy trickle snakes down my spine, the recycled air suddenly glacial. What is your purpose? Nocturnal betrayals of the bladder lingered until your 11th year, she continues, relentless. Your father's swift recourse to his leather belt, hence the sliver of light beneath the bathroom door, a nightly vigil against the encroaching dark, a habit persisting even now. My jaw clenches, teeth grinding. Enough. Pocketed trifles, small rebellions, a chocolate bar lifted from a convenience store shelf, a disposable lighter here and there, that glossy periodical you slipped into your coat pocket at the pharmacy just days ago, the minor transgression, the fleeting, intoxicating illusion of command. A suffocating pressure builds behind my sternum. How could she possibly know these buried shames, these hidden erosions of self? Why are you inflicting this? Clara, your sister, the voice intones, devoid of sympathy. The narrative spun of twisted metal and slick, rain-darkened roads was a kindness offered to the world. She chose her own exit. You sensed the undertow, didn't you? Her slow descent into shadow. But Isabel was new then, wasn't she? A bright, demanding distraction. You silenced Clara's calls that final week. That knowledge gnaws incessantly. Acid stings my eyes, blurring the monitor's glow. I beg you, cease this. Her shade visits your sleep 3 times a week on average. Her mouth moves, shaping soundless words forever lost in the turbulent fog of dreams. You surface, gasping, tears track in hot paths into the pillow, sleep irrevocably shattered. The urge to slam down the receiver, to sever the connection, is a primal scream within me. But futile. Disconnection only summons immediate, relentless recalls until her recitation is complete. Isabel, the voice presses on, finds solace elsewhere now, with Julian, at the Starlight Motor Inn, just off Highway 12. Thursdays, noon sharp, during her alleged lunch hour, you glimpsed her burgundy sedan parked discreetly near the backlot last week, didn't you, Elias? A convenient fiction, quickly constructed, smoothed over the jarring recognition. Nausea churns, hot and bitter in my gut. That car, the location, I knew it, yet I'd buried the certainty. Your current checking account holds precisely $611.38, she states with chilling accuracy. Rent looms in 4 days. The deficit stands at $350. Your Aunt Celia flickers across your thoughts, a potential lifeline, but the crushing weight of prior, unrepaid debts silences the desperate request. The precision steals my breath. I'd verified the balance less than an hour ago. Remember age 15, your father's sedan, your clumsy adolescent maneuvers in the empty church parking lot. Mrs. Petrov's ginger tomcat vanished without a trace. Buried hastily, wasn't it, near the splintered back fence. Her tear-streaked face haunts you still, the lost cat flyers clinging stubbornly to telephone poles for months, fading testaments to your secret. My fingers spasm, cold sweat beading on my forehead. Thoughts I've never dared articulate, secrets I thought were mine alone. Desist, please. It's too much. And the irregular, pigmented mark low on your spine, she persists. It darkens, expands, doesn't it? Fear whispers malignancy, a terror amplified by the financial chains that bind you. Your phone holds a secret, morbid gallery chronicling its subtle progression, nightly comparisons under the harsh glare of the bathroom light. My hand drifts reflexively towards the spot on my lower back. I took another picture just this morning. Who are you? How is this possible? Your father enjoys no Floridian retirement at all. He resides within the gray walls of Pendleton Correctional Facility, Indiana. Embezzlement was the charge. Tampa is the palatable fiction you offer the world, a shield against shame. 3 years have passed, not a single visit. Each disclosure lands like a physical blow, excavating every buried shard of guilt and shame. What is your objective? What do you want from me? The utility knife, she says softly, nestled beneath the strata of invoices in your top desk drawer, acquired a fortnight past, a flimsy talisman against me? Utterly futile. My gaze darts involuntarily to the drawer. It rests there, cold steel hidden under paper. Your time narrows, Elias Thorne, swiftly now, and who remains to mourn your passing? You've meticulously architected your solitude. You'll expire alone in that sterile apartment, undiscovered for 3 days. A frantic, suffocating pulse hammers in my ears, threatening to burst. Lies. That's not true. You can't dictate fate. Time bleeds away, Elias, the voice insists, almost gentle now. The persistent pressure in your chest. It isn't mere anxiety. The skull-splitting aches that plague you, not simply tension. The dizzy spells that steal your balance, not hunger, pangs from skipped meals. These were warnings, ignored for months. The window of opportunity has irrevocably closed. The symptoms, she names them with terrifying precision. I have been feeling them. Why reveal this to me? Because someone must bear witness, the voice murmurs. Because truth possesses an insistent gravity. It surfaces eventually. Your name, I plead, a final desperate request. Just tell me who you are. Observe your monitor, Elias. My eyes obey, drawn to the screen. The digits flicker, morphing. 3:33 a.m. Impossible. Seconds ago, it was barely past 2. How did you... Consult your telephone handset. I pull the receiver away from my ear. Dead air. The console display shows no active line, no record of any call received since my shift began. Panic, cold and absolute, claws at my throat. I push back my chair, my legs trembling, unsteady beneath me. The cavernous room is utterly deserted. Silas's office, a dark, empty mall. The other workstations, powered down, lifeless. Then the pain erupts, a vice crushing my chest, radiating outwards, a fiery serpent coiling down my left arm. My mobile phone. I fumble for it on the desk. My fingers are numb, clumsy, unresponsive. It clatters to the floor, skittering away. Air refuses to enter my lungs. The room tilts, dissolves into a dizzying vortex of swirling grays and blacks. A strangled cry dies in my throat, soundless. My knees buckle, the last image searing itself onto my retinas before the darkness consumes everything. The monitor, wiped clean of the clock display, now showing stark white text against the black void. Farewell, Elias Thorne. Give your mother my regards. Consciousness flickered back under the harsh, sterile lights of a hospital room. 3 days, I learned, had been swallowed by oblivion. A coronary event. Massive, the physicians murmured gravely. Discovered by the night cleaner, my heartbeat a faltering moth against the encroaching void. My frantic, fragmented explanations. The voice, the impossible knowledge, the temporal anomaly, earned only sympathetic nods, prescriptions for calming agents, and pamphlets detailing psychiatric services. I severed all ties with Omnicorp, found new walls in a different part of the city, adopted a new, unlisted phone number, scrubbed my old identity clean. Yet, nightly, with chilling punctuality, at precisely 2 a.m., the new phone vibrates on the nightstand. Unknown caller, and each night I lift it to my ear. Because something fundamental shifted in that sterile office, in that moment of predicted oblivion. I defied her script. I persisted. I am still here. But her knowledge persists as well. Fresh revelations bloom in the pre-dawn darkness, futures whispered across the static-laden line, terrifying, specific glimpses of what lies ahead. Last night, the intersection of Astor and Elm, 9:17. Tomorrow morning, a speeding courier van destined to ignore the crimson light. She detailed the precise detour required for survival. The night prior, a subtle flaw detected in the building's ancient furnace, silently leaking odorless poison into the vents. A call to the superintendent, prompted by her warning, averted potential disaster. Savior or tormentor, helper or harbinger, perhaps the roles blur, two sides of the same inexplicable coin. But I know I will keep answering, because sometimes the most terrifying truths aren't the buried secrets of our past, but the unavoidable realities of our future. It rings now. The witching hour returns. 2 a.m. again. I accept the call, the plastic cool against my ear. Elias, the familiar nicotine-rasped voice begins, devoid of preamble. Shall we discuss tomorrow? A tremor runs through me, a frisson of fear and unwilling necessity, but I steady my voice. Yes, God have mercy on my soul. Yes. Sleep paralysis had always been its own private hell, a familiar treachery enacted by my own flesh. Night after night, I'd surface into immobility, a prisoner beneath my own ceiling, a suffocating weight pinning my chest, my body a mutinous vessel. But there was solace, however scant, in the eventual climax, that desperate, thrashing break for freedom. I'd bolt upright, gulping air, swiping dampness from my brow, the adrenaline a harsh reset, a grim ritual, but mine alone. Until a few months passed. The solitude shattered. Something new crept into the paralysis, a presence sensed at the periphery, a distinct weight settling near the edge of my bed. A watcher, and it has lingered, a shadow stitched to my nights ever since. My name is Elias. I inhabit a compact, one-bedroom space, nestled on the second floor of a building whose timbers sigh with age. Its narrow corridors feel like constricted throats, the wooden floors keen underfoot. Darkness amplifies every nocturnal murmur, the plumbing's gastric groans, the muffled scuffling of unseen neighbors. 2 years I've called this place home. The sleep paralysis predates it, a long-standing affliction, yet everything warped one night, roughly 3 months ago. That evening found me adrift on the cusp of sleep, that telltale viscous heaviness seeping into my limbs. Eyelids sealed, yet consciousness stubbornly clung. When this particular lethargy descends, I brace for the ordeal, the chest tightening, the limbs refusing command, even toes numbly unresponsive to frantic mental signals, standard procedure for my broken sleep. But then, a novel sensation, pressure near my feet, faint initially, like the hesitant placement of a hand upon the quilt. It intensified. The mattress dipped. A surge of panic. I strained to force my eyes open, a futile command. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Breath hitched, shallow and inadequate. This weight, it was undeniably real. With a supreme effort, I peeled my eyelids back fractionally. Vision swam, blurred by the paralysis, reducing the room to indistinct shapes and deepening gloom. Yet, there it was, something tall, an upright silhouette perched on the bed's edge, humanoid, yet featureless, its form long, unnervingly slender, its head inclined downwards, as if scrutinizing me intently. A low, resonant vibration reached me, not quite a growl, more a deep, subaudible thrum emanating from its vicinity. A scream built in my throat, a silent, desperate plea. My tongue felt thick, fused to the roof of my mouth. Then, abruptly as it began, the spell broke. Limbs jerked free. I surged upwards, drenched, the sheets clinging like a second skin. My heart threatened to batter its way out. I fumbled for the lamp, flooding the space with weak light. The foot of the bed was empty, yet the phantom pressure, the feeling of its presence, remained. My hands trembled violently. My mouth was parchment dry. Sleep became an impossibility that night. That was the genesis, the first chilling confirmation that something shared my room. In the ensuing weeks, the visitation became routine. I'd awaken midnight, locked in that familiar bodily prison, and perceive the same towering, vacant form, sometimes seated sentinel at the bed's edge, other times standing starkly in a corner. Never a face, just an unnerving blankness atop an elongated neck, shoulders sloping acutely downwards, each time accompanied by that low, humming resonance, a sound that felt less like noise and more like a physical vibration in the air, perhaps an attempt at communication I couldn't decipher. After a fortnight of this spectral companionship, bedtime became a dreaded event. I fought sleep, seeking refuge on the living room couch, the television casting flickering, empty light. It offered no sanctuary. One pre-dawn hour, drifting off around 1 a.m., I woke to the familiar paralysis. Eyes open, body inert. The TV had lapsed into standby, plunging the room into near blackness. Beside me, the couch cushions depressed. Turning my gaze with excruciating slowness, I saw it. The shape, settled beside me, leaning closer. That thrumming hum vibrated directly into my ear, like a distant, idling engine. My pulse pounded in my temples. I strained to raise a hand, to push it away, but my flesh remained traitorously still. When release finally came, the figure had vanished, but the fear intensified, metastasized. It wasn't confined to the bedroom. It was tethered to me. I stumbled to the kitchen, splashed frigid water on my face, standing under the stark, fluorescent glare for a long half-hour, skin clammy, stomach churning. Every creak from the hallway beyond sent a jolt through me. Peripheral flickers became potential movements. Was it my frayed nerves, or was the boundary blurring? I no longer trusted my perception. Days bled into nights of escalating dread. Sleep, when it came, inevitably invited the figure during paralysis. Terrifying, yes, but the waking hours became poisoned too. A persistent feeling of being observed shadowed me through my own apartment. Glances thrown towards darkened corners became reflexive. Did a silhouette just shift? Was that shadow merely a trick of the light? The sensation clung, cloying and constant. Small defenses were erected. Additional lamps colonized the living room, banishing shadows from every conceivable angle. My bedroom door remained perpetually ajar, the hallway vista intended as reassurance. Yet, the brighter the artificial light, the more animated the remaining shadows seemed, dancing mockingly on the walls. Every bulb's flicker, my own reflection caught momentarily in a window pane, triggers for a stomach-lurching dread. My nights devolved into a miserable cycle. Anxiety, fractured sleep, jarring awakenings. One evening, desperation spurred action. I propped my phone on a tripod, aimed it at the bed, and pressed record. Proof. I needed tangible evidence that this wasn't mere phantasmagoria born of a stressed mind. If the camera saw it, I wasn't unraveling. Bedtime near midnight. Sleep remained elusive for an hour, perhaps two, thoughts circling like vultures. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me. The next conscious moment was the return of that dreadful pressure, arms leaden, pinned, mouth sealed, eyes fixed skyward. That deep, resonant thrum filled my ears again. I strained my eyes, scanning the room's periphery without moving my head, and then I saw it, standing against the far wall by the closet, impossibly tall, its head grazing the ceiling, the featureless void where a face should be swiveled towards me. The humming seemed amplified, penetrating. A distinct coldness traced my arms, a chill seeping through the skin. Tears welled, blurring my vision further, trapped by my inability to blink properly. My heart's frantic cadence echoed in my ears. Consciousness threatened to fray. Then, the figure detached itself from the wall, took a deliberate step towards the bed. It leaned, looming directly above me. Breath hitched, trapped. A final futile surge of will against unresponsive muscles. It hovered there, an eternity compressed into seconds, until the snap, the violent release, the return of movement. I scrambled upright, gasping, phone snatched, fingers fumbling, nearly dropping it. Playback, my own sleeping form, shifting slightly, twitching occasionally. Nothing more. No towering presence by the closet. No anomalous shapes. No inexplicable shadows or light shifts. Just me, seemingly lost in ordinary slumber. A wave of cold disappointment washed over me, followed swiftly by a deeper, more insidious fear. The visual evidence refuted my visceral reality. Was my mind fracturing? At work, my supervisor began inquiring about my well-being. Dark smudges bloomed beneath my eyes, Focus became a slippery commodity. Colleagues cast worried glances when I'd zone out, staring blankly. I found myself compulsively checking over my shoulder, a primal fear that the figure might manifest even here, amidst the mundane office hum. Headaches became constant companions. Typing was hampered by trembling hands. Even the simple act of getting coffee felt fraught, my reflection in the machine's polished surface, a potential canvas for that faceless silhouette lurking just behind me. Back in the dubious sanctuary of my apartment, I experimented futilely. Different sleeping postures, extra pillows propping my head, shifting the bed's position closer to the door. Nothing deterred it. Every descent into sleep, even brief naps, summoned the presence, sometimes seated, sometimes hovering, sometimes heralded by that low rumble from the hallway just before its appearance. The sound remained constant, that deep, almost mechanical vibration. On a few occasions, a faint rasping undertone seemed woven into the hum, like the ghost of attempted words, utterly indecipherable. One night, I surfaced from deep sleep without the accompanying paralysis, a flicker of relief, instantly extinguished by a profound unease. The bedroom was steeped in darkness, the air feeling strangely thick, heavy. My hand reached instinctively for the bedside lamp. Before my fingers found the switch, a definite shift in the corner snagged my attention. I froze. Every rational thought screamed, "Don't look," but instinct urged, "Light, now." My hand brushed the switch. Lamplight flared. For one heart-stopping microsecond, I perceived a tall form pressed flat against the wall. Then it dissolved, vanished from view. Breath came in ragged, shallow bursts. I scanned the room frantically. The corner stood empty. I remained sitting up, blinking against the light, unwilling to extinguish it. Hugging my knees, I fought to quell the frantic racing of my heart. Fear was no longer confined to paralysis. It was a constant state, a waking nightmare. Following that incident, a grim practicality took hold, fueled by the fear of my own potential irrationality. Lights were installed in every room. A standing lamp illuminated the hallway through the night. My electricity bill soared. I barely registered the cost. The television became a permanent fixture, its ceaseless chatter filling the living room, a bulwark against silence. Yet, the presence persisted, an undeniable weight in the atmosphere. Shadows seemed to writhe at the edges of my vision. Walking from kitchen to bedroom felt like wading through unseen currents. The distinct sensation of being followed dogging my steps. If I stopped abruptly, I half expected a collision with something immediately behind me. Appetite evaporated. My hands shook too much for complex cooking. Meals became perfunctory affairs. Canned soup, microwaved remnants. The simple act of standing at the stove felt perilous. My gaze constantly darted around the kitchen, anticipating that low hum echoing through the space. Once or twice, I thought I heard it emanating from the extractor fan vent, only to dismiss it as the refrigerator's aging motor. Or so I told myself, the conviction wavering. It reached the point where I dragged a small television into the bedroom, letting it drone through the night. The noise, I reasoned, might occupy my subconscious, prevent that treacherous descent into the half-state where the figure held sway. It offered fleeting respite. Sleep would come, only to be shattered 2-3 hours later by the familiar crushing weight in my limbs. And inevitably, the shape would materialize. By the door, at the foot of the bed, tears of frustration and terror would stream as I strained against invisible bonds. My jaw ached perpetually from clenching. Then the jolt awake, the flickering TV images reflecting on my sweat-sheened face. No strategy worked. There was no escaping this nocturnal visitor. One afternoon, seeking refuge from the oppressive weight of sleeplessness, I sat in the living room, blinds drawn against the day. A dull throb pulsed behind my eyes. Exhaustion permeated every cell. It was mid-afternoon, perhaps 3 p.m., yet I felt as if I hadn't truly slept in an eternity. I decided to risk closing my eyes, just for a moment. Leaning back into the couch cushions, I let the weariness pull me under, hoping daylight might prove a safer harbor. I don't know how long I was out. The next awareness was the sound, that low, resonant rumble. Closer, impossibly close. I tried to open my eyes, the familiar paralysis instantly recognized. Heart pounding violently, wrists twitched uselessly. The hum intensified, vibrating through the cushions, through me. Then something brushed against my ankle, a distinct light pressure, like cold fingertips tracing my skin. Raw panic surged, my throat constricted. Forcing my eyes open a slit, I saw the shape looming directly over me. It appeared to be bending, reaching. No face, but the intent of its gaze felt palpable. My chest burned with the frantic rhythm of my heart. A choked sound tried to escape my throat. The shape leaned nearer, its presence almost touching my forehead. A tangible chill spread across my face. And then, as always, the violent snap back to reality. I lurched forward, nearly tumbling from the couch, gasping, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My forehead was slick with cold sweat. Fumbling for the remote, I bathed the room in light, breath sawing in my chest. I sat there, rigid, staring at the empty space where it had stood. The air felt heavy, viscous, difficult to draw into my lungs. That corner of the room appeared vacant, yet the certainty of its continued presence was absolute, a silent promise waiting for my eyes to close again. Now, I inhabit a state where I anticipate this presence in every silence, every shadow. It's no longer confined to the paralysis. I feel it when fully awake. A subtle pressure in the dim hallway, a flicker in the periphery of the kitchen. Catching my reflection in the bathroom mirror sometimes reveals a fleeting darker shape behind my own before resolving into nothing. But the tension remains coiled in my muscles, the dampness perpetually slick on my palms. I exist on a knife edge of vigilance. Few know the extent of this. A friend visited once, queried the excessive illumination. I muttered an excuse about faulty wiring, ancient building quirks. He accepted it. The courage to articulate the truth fails me. How does one confess to being haunted by a featureless entity born of sleep paralysis, an entity that now bleeds into waking hours, inhabiting the corners of one's home? It sounds like madness, yet the sensations are undeniable. The weight on the mattress, the resonant hum, the visual confirmation, however fleeting. It is real enough to dictate my reality. Each night is a siege. I resist sleep until exhaustion renders me unconscious. I awaken drenched in cold sweat, pulse frantic. Sometimes I find myself standing disoriented in the hallway, no memory of leaving the bed. Other times, I surface to the blare of the television, lights blazing, doors flung open, the lingering adrenaline of a dream chase clinging to me. But the figure is constant, always there, in the background, silent save for that deep vibration that resonates in the twilight state, between sleep and waking. When my eyes open each morning, the ritual begins. Scan the corners, check the foot of the bed, survey the room, hoping, always hoping, for absence. But the feeling persists, the watcher remains. I live encased in this perpetual tension. Every muscle group aches with the strain. Small noises make me jump. My ears seem permanently attuned, catching phantom echoes of that low hum. What it wants, why it's here. These questions remain unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. I only know its refusal to leave. This is my landscape now. I've ceased questioning its objective reality. It matters little. Its power to terrify is manifest in my mind, felt in every shallow, constricted breath. This is the rhythm of my days. I wake. I sense it. I sleep. I feel it. There is no escape velocity. I have arrived at a grim acceptance. This may simply be how things are now. I navigate from one day to the next, checking the corners, bathing the dark in light, and bracing for the next inevitable moment when my body betrays me, locking me down as that tall, faceless shape emerges once more from the gloom. I wish I knew how to sever this connection, but for now, survival means simply holding myself together. That is all I can do. And perhaps that is all there is left. That hinge groaned, a sound like old bones complaining. 21 days we'd inhabited this shell on Elmwood Avenue, and 21 days I'd treated the cellar stairs as a precipice to somewhere I refused to go, a dank, subterranean pocket rank with the breath of damp earth. But Sophie's bright red ball had betrayed me, bouncing with cheerful ignorance down into the gloom. No more excuses. A lungful of stale air, the snap of the light switch shattering the quiet, and then the reluctant downward spiral. And there, set into the crumbling foundation wall, an impossibility framed in stone. A door utterly absent from memory, from blueprints, from reason. The arch a place. They'd practically given it away, a relic sighing under the weight of neglect. Clara, my wife, saw only the promise etched in the curve of the wraparound veranda. Our Sophie buzzed with the sheer novelty of walls that were hers alone. Me? Ownership felt solid, a tangible anchor, so we plunged into the chaos of cardboard mountains and the fumes of fresh paint, willfully deaf to the house's subtler whispers, pockets of unnatural cold clinging to the parlor air, bulbs that stuttered like dying heartbeats, faint skitterings behind the plaster I'd readily blamed on industrious vermin. Ignorance felt like bliss, until that moment, bathed in the sickly fluorescence, staring at the thing that shouldn't exist. The whispers suddenly screamed. Ancient, it radiated age, a deeper vintage than the surrounding structure. The wood, near black and scored by time, bore carvings, not mere decoration, but unsettling sigils that seemed to writhe just beyond the edge of comprehension. No knob, no latch, only a single, pitted iron ring, weeping rust stains down the grain, and its stature, barely tall enough for Sophie to pass through without stooping. a child-sized portal. Clara, my voice, thin in the vastness of the cellar. Could you come see this? Her tread overhead, lighter on the descent. Miles, find Sophie's ball. Then silence. A sharp intake of breath beside me. Merciful God, what is that? You've never seen it? Pointless question. Her stunned expression was answer enough. It wasn't on the inspection, she whispered, eyes locked on the anomaly. It wasn't here. Miles, how? My fingers hovered near the cold iron ring, a primal warning thrumming in my veins. Don't. Do we? Clara began, her voice a thread. But Sophie's bright summons floated down from the sunlit world above. Mama, Papa, did you find my bouncy ball? A shared glance, heavy with unspoken dread. Later, I managed, the word tasting like postponement, not resolution. We deal with this later. Upstairs, the basement door clicked shut, a flimsy barrier against the questions churning below. But the image of that small, carved portal remained, burned onto my retinas. Later, cocooned in the false normalcy of the kitchen, we sat opposite each other, untouched mugs of coffee radiating a pathetic warmth between us. The agent, Clara stated, her voice flat. Tomorrow. Maybe it's some forgotten access. A coal bin? I gave a non-committal nod. But coal bins don't wear symbols that crawl under your skin. They don't emanate a silence that feels louder than noise. Yes, I agreed, the lie sticking in my throat. Morning. Sleep was a shallow, restless sea. Then, somewhere near the soul-chilling hour of 2, it began. A dull thump from below. Then, scrap. The sound of weight dragged across concrete. My breath hitched. Clara shifted beside me, sensing my tension. Miles, what is it? Shh. I strained my ears. Thump. Scrappy. Louder now, undeniably subterranean. Her fingers dug into my arm. What is that? Adrenaline surged, cold and sharp. I swung my legs over the side, the floorboards cold beneath my feet. The old Louisville slugger felt heavy, inadequate in my hand. Stay here. I'll see. No, Miles, please. Her voice was tight with fear. Call someone. Probably just pests, I lied, moving towards the bedroom door. Back in a minute. The lie felt thin as cobwebs. Each stair tread groaned its protest under my weight as I descended into the thickening silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic scrape from the depths. My hand trembled, reaching for the basement door's knob. Below, darkness pressed against the small, high windows, barely diluted by the distant streetlights. Fumbling, heart hammering against my ribs, I found the switch. The fluorescent tube overhead buzzed, hesitated, then flooded the cellar in stark, sterile light. My gaze snapped to the far corner. Open. The small, impossible door hung ajar, gaping like a wound into absolute, impenetrable black. The scraping intensified, emanating from that void. One step, another. The bat felt like a child's toy. "Who's there?" The words cracked, fragile. Silence crashed down. The scraping ceased, and then, spilling from the Stygian dark beyond the threshold, a sound that froze the marrow in my bones. Laughter. Soft, high-pitched, unmistakably a child's giggle. I staggered back, the bat slipping in my sweat-slicked palm. "Sophie!" A strangled whisper. Absurd. Impossible. I'd seen her sleeping, safe in her sun-yellow room. The giggle echoed again, closer now, laced with something cold and ancient. And then, slowly, deliberately, a hand emerged from the blackness, small, white as bone. Its tiny fingers curled around the jagged edge of the doorframe. Primal terror uncoiled in my gut. I turned and fled. Up the stairs, clumsy, desperate, lungs burning. The basement door slammed behind me with the force of a gunshot. I leaned against the wood, shuddering, sucking air in ragged gasps. Clara stood white-faced at the landing. "Miles! Oh God, what was it? What did you see?" No words came. I could only shake my head, waving her frantically back towards the upper floor. Our first instinct, unified and sharp. Sophie. We burst into her room. She lay undisturbed, breathing softly amidst her stuffed menagerie. Relief, potent and dizzying. Then, retreating to our own room, we wedged a chair under the knob, prisoners in our own home. Dawn arrived pale and uncertain. We made the call. The agent, Ms. Albright, arrived radiating professional calm, murmuring reassurances about settling noises and old house character as we led her towards the cellar. "I'm quite sure there's a simple explanation." Her voice trailed off as her eyes fell upon the small, dark door. The practiced smile dissolved. "That," she breathed, her composure fractured, "was not here. I swear it." We recounted the night's terrors, the sounds, the giggle, the hand. She listened, her face paling progressively. Finally, she drew a shaky breath. "There's something about the Archer place, not in the disclosures. Decades past," she explained, "a family resided here. Parents, a little girl. The girl disappeared, vanished utterly. Whispers implicated the parents, though nothing was ever proven. They fled the house, the town, the unspoken accusations." "But the door?" Clara pressed. Ms. Albright shook her head, eyes darting towards the closed portal. "Unknown, but the house, it's had incidents since. Noises, objects displaced, and sightings." She hesitated. "Of a child," I supplied, the word heavy in the musty air. A slow nod. "Forgive me. We were assured. It had been quiet for so long. We hoped it was over." A heavy silence descended, thick with the unspoken history and the presence of that closed, carved door. "So," I said, the question hanging raw between us, "what now?" Ms. Albright sighed, the sound weary. "Your choice. Listed again, full disclosure, this time. Or, Clara echoed urgently. "Perhaps," the agent offered softly, her gaze distant. She remains for a reason. The lost girl. Perhaps she needs resolution. My eyes met Clara's. Our dream home, built on the foundations of a nightmare. Could we raise Sophie here, shadowed by another child's sorrow? We stayed. An exorcism felt too dramatic, too final, so we settled for a nervous priest's blessing, poured over brittle newspaper archives, even endured a fruitless seance that filled the house with lavender smoke, but little else. And the house seemed to excel. The scraping ceased. The spectral hand remained unseen, yet the quiet isn't complete. Sometimes, drifting on the edge of sleep, or alone in the hush of midday, I hear it, faint, ethereal, a child's giggle echoing from the cellar's depths. Did we choose coexistence, or merely denial? Are we custodians of a healing sorrow, or fools tending a slumbering monster? Because the door remains, unchanged, solid, undeniable, and occasionally, when descending into the gloom for laundry or the temperamental furnace, my eyes are drawn to it, and I see it, or perhaps I imagine it, a sliver of profound darkness visible at its edge, a crack, as if it waits, as if it invites, and a cold dread mixes with a terrifying curiosity. What lies beyond, should that invitation ever be accepted? The sharp fracture of wood underfoot shattered the quietude. I went utterly still, my skewer laden with charring sugar, hovering motionless above the campfire's hypnotic dance. Around me, the forest, a welcoming tapestry of green and gold by day, had transformed with the descending twilight into a wall of deepening, inscrutable shadow. My own breathing felt impossibly loud against the fire's insistent crackle as I strained to decipher the sound. It came again, no woodland creature this time, but the distinct cadence of footfalls, heavy, measured, deliberate. I'd sought refuge in these trees, a solitary escape from the city's relentless clamor. Now, a cold tendril of fear traced its way up my spine, reminding me with brutal clarity just how profoundly alone I was. With painstaking slowness, I lowered the skewer to the needle-strewn earth, my fingers closing around the cool metal cylinder of the torch beside me. Its beam sliced aggressively into the encroaching gloom, painting the tangled underbrush at the campsite's perimeter in stark relief. Illusory shapes writhed between the trunks. A flicker at the edge of sight suggested a form melting behind the girth of an ancient sentinel oak. Who's there? The question escaped my lips, a thin, trembling thread of sound in the vast quiet. Is anyone out there? Only silence responded, punctuated by the sigh of an evening breeze stirring the canopy. I rose, my limbs feeling unsteady, foreign. Perhaps it was merely imagination, the solitude breeding phantoms in the periphery. But then, a definite slip of motion, just beyond the torch's luminous reach. My pulse hammered against my ribs. A dark shape, swift and purposeful, navigated the trees, hugging the deepest folds of shadow. Instinct, raw and primal, screamed, "Run!" I smothered the campfire with frantic scoops of dirt, plunging the small clearing into near absolute blackness. Guided only by the torch's wavering eye, I fumbled with my pack, stuffing essentials inside with clumsy haste. Canteen, nuts, the folded map. The footsteps, however, were drawing nearer, no longer bothering with stealth. They knew I'd seen them. They were closing in. Abandoning the tent and remaining supplies, I bolted into the woods, the torch beam bouncing erratically, illuminating fleeting glimpses of a hostile landscape. Branches lashed at my face like angry whips. Roots snaked across the path, seemingly intent on tripping me. Sheer terror was my engine, propelling me deeper into the unfamiliar wilderness. After an eternity compressed into minutes, I collapsed against a rough-barked tree, lungs burning, desperate for air. Panic tightened its grip as I tried to get my bearings. I had fled blindly, heedless of direction. The truth struck with physical force. I was irrevocably lost. My hand scrabbled inside the pack for the map, the compass, but they weren't there, left behind in the chaotic scramble. My phone, predictably, showed no signal, its battery icon flashing a desperate red. Nearby, a twig snapped with startling clarity. A choked cry died in my throat. They were still behind me. How? How could they track me so precisely through this suffocating darkness? I scrambled onward again, noise discipline forgotten. My pursuer, it seemed, needed no trail to follow. Agony flared in my chest. My legs screamed in protest, yet fear lent wings to my feet. Abruptly, the forest floor vanished. I tumbled down a precipitous slope, a dizzying cascade of leaves, dirt, and stinging blows. I landed hard at the bottom, the air forced from my lungs. For a disoriented moment, I lay gasping, stunned. Then I heard it, the careful, deliberate crunch of someone descending the embankment after me. A fresh wave of panic lent me impossible strength. I lurched upright, ignoring the sharp throb in my ankle, and stumbled forward into a small, unexpected clearing. Here, the trees receded, unveiling a breathtaking sweep of star-dusted sky. Under different circumstances, the sight would have been solace. My torch flickered violently, its beam fading. I shook it, a useless, desperate gesture. The light sputtered and died, plunging me into profound, disorienting blackness. Wood cracked at the clearing's edge. I spun, eyes straining against the gloom, trying to pierce the starlit dimness. A figure stood there, a solid silhouette against the deeper umbra of the trees. "What is it you want?" I yelled, my voice ragged, stripped bare by terror and exhaustion. The silhouette advanced a single step. "I want you to listen." A deep voice resonated, surprisingly calm. I retreated, hands instinctively raised. "Stay away. I'm armed." The bluff felt pathetic, hollow, but it was all I possessed. The man, I could discern the form now, paused. "No, you aren't," he stated, his tone almost unnervingly gentle. "You left everything at the camp, including this." He raised an object. It caught the faint starlight, glinting wickedly. My own hunting knife. A chasm opened in my stomach. He'd been there, searched my belongings. How long had he been watching? "Who are you?" I demanded, fighting to keep the tremor from my voice. "Why are you doing this?" He moved closer still, tall, broad, clad in dark attire that merged with the night. A beard shadowed his lower face. A cap obscured the rest. "My name is of no consequence," he said. "What matters is why you're here, Elara." The world tilted violently. He knew my name. The impossibility of it stole my breath. "How do you know?" He anticipated. "Who I am. I know a great deal about you, Elara. I know you came here fleeing something or someone." My thoughts fractured, racing. A private detective, hired by Marcus? As if plucking the thought from my mind, the man slowly shook his head. "I don't work for your ex-husband, if that's your concern. I'm here because I want to help you." "Help me!" A brittle laugh escaped me, teetering on the edge of hysteria. "By stalking me through the wilderness in the dead of night." Beyond Havenwood, Nebraska, where the asphalt surrendered to gravel and dust, the old Thorn place presided over its domain of rustling corn and whispering wheat. It stood sentinel at the terminus of a serpentine track, a relic dreaming under the vast prairie sky. The allure of reclamation, the quiet promise whispered by neglected structures, had always held me captive. When its listing surfaced, a skeleton seeking skin, a history yearning for continuation, I saw not decay, but potential. The price, a mere whisper itself, sealed the bargain. I claimed it, ignorant of the echoes trapped within its walls. My arrival coincided with the Saturday zenith, the sun a molten coin overhead. An ocean of grain rippled outwards, perfuming the air with a fertile scent of loam and life. Yet, the house, a 2-story sentinel, shedding its white paint like bleached snakeskin, defied the day's warmth. Vacant window sockets stared, some crudely blinded with timber. The porch slumped, weary from decades of solitude. My truck tires chewed the gravel drive, the sound unnervingly loud in the profound quiet. Approaching the threshold, an inexplicable current traced my spine. Here, the air possessed a different temper, a coolness that belied the sun's dominion. The heavy plank door resisted, then groaned open on protesting hinges, the sound swallowed by the waiting emptiness. Inside, twilight reigned. Dust motes pirouetted in the slanted shafts of sunlight, piercing broken panes, illuminating a tableau of neglect. Cobwebs draped corners like spectral lace. I deposited my toolbox near the grand staircase, its shadow stretching long across the floorboards. The main room was cavernous, dominated by a hearth wide enough to swallow secrets. Furniture huddled beneath shrouds of white linen, spectral shapes in the gloom. I tugged a sheet free, revealing the ghost of a sofa, its fabric frayed, exhaling the musty breath of damp and decay. My intention was to cleanse, to impose order, but a subtle dissonance arrested me. A door, tucked away at the room's far end, hung slightly ajar, a silent invitation. Drawn by an insistent curiosity, I nudged it wider. A narrow corridor unfolded, leading deeper into the house's heart. Portraits hung askew, their unfamiliar faces regarding me from the past. One arrested my gaze. A family posed before this very house, their smiles frozen, yet their eyes seemed to plead from hollow depths. I forced the unease down, turning back to the task at hand. Hours bled into one another, marked by the scrape of brushes and the rhythm of wiping away time's residue. As the sun dipped low, painting the dusty air in hues of apricot and rose, I sought respite on the dilapidated sofa. The house settled around me, a symphony of creaks and groans, the language of old wood. Then, a distinct sound fractured the quiet. Footfalls, deliberate, on the floorboards overhead. My pulse leapt. I rose, gaze fixed on the shadowed staircase. The steps descended, growing louder, nearer. Retrieving a flashlight from my tools, I moved towards the stairs, my own cautious tread adding to the unsettling chorus. The upper landing stretched before me, a corridor flanked by tightly shut doors. "Is anyone present?" My voice, thin in the stillness, elicited no response. A deep breath did little to quell the tremor in my hands. The footsteps ceased abruptly. I advanced, the flashlight's beam slicing the oppressive darkness. At the corridor's end, one door stood partially open, a sliver of light escaping from beneath. Pushing it inward revealed a small bedchamber. Disorder reigned, the bed unmade, garments strewn like fallen leaves. A tarnished mirror hung opposite, its surface fractured, reflecting a distorted image of myself. Stepping closer, I wiped at the grime. My reflection stared back, but behind it, hovering in the mirrored doorway, a silhouette, dark and indistinct. I whirled around. Nothing. Only empty air and the frantic thrumming in my chest. Turning back to the glass, the apparition had vanished. Retreat. The imperative screamed in my mind. It was time to yield the house to the night. Descending the stairs, a whisper coiled through the air, faint yet chillingly clear. "Help me." I froze, straining to hear. It came again, closer, intimate. "Help me." Raw panic surged. I snatched my belongings, lunging for the front door. As my hand reached the knob, the heavy panel slammed shut with violent finality. I wrestled with it, rattling the wood, but it held fast, mocking my efforts. The whispering intensified, swirling around me now, a chorus of disembodied pleas. "Help me." Desperate, I threw myself at a window, struggling with the swollen frame, but it refused to yield. The whispers grew insistent, pressing in, accompanied by the palpable weight of unseen eyes. Backing away, I fought for composure, my thoughts scattering like startled birds. The cellar. Perhaps an egress lay hidden there. I remembered a door near the back. Clutching the flashlight, I navigated towards it, finding it now swinging gently open on its own accord. I slipped through, into the embrace of the cool night air, a stark relief from the suffocating tension within. Without a backward glance, I sprinted down the dirt track, the looming silhouette of the house pursuing me in my mind. Inside the truck's cab, doors locked, I leaned against the wheel, breath tearing raggedly from my lungs. The house stood distant, inscrutable, under the cloak of night. The engine roared, shattering the silence. As I pulled away, a compulsive glance in the rearview mirror revealed only darkness swallowing the farm. Dawn found me drawn back, compelled by a need stronger than fear. Sunlight gilded the fields, the air sharp with morning's promise, yet the house retained its aura of disquiet. I parked, approached with trepidation. The front door yielded easily this time. Inside, the familiar dust lay thick, but superimposed upon it were fresh footprints. Not mine. They led inevitably towards the shadowed hallway. Heart hammering, I followed their trail to the rear of the house, to the basement door. Yesterday locked, today ajar. I descended into the earth's cool breath, flashlight beam cutting through the subterranean gloom. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of mold and damp stone. Tools lay scattered, forgotten furniture loomed in corners, but my attention snagged on a small, intricately carved chest standing alone in the center of the earthen floor. Kneeling, I lifted the heavy lid. Letters, brittle with age, and faded photographs filled the interior. Sifting through them, the story of Elias Thorne emerged. A man besieged by financial ruin, fractured by family discord. One missive spoke elliptically of a disappearance. Lenora, his wife, vanished years ago, leaving only questions. The photographs depicted a smiling family, now haunted by the specter of her absence. A chill permeated deeper than the cellar's damp. Elias's secrets were woven into the very fabric of this place. As my fingers brushed the last letter, the basement door slammed shut above. I recoiled, the flashlight beam sputtering. The whispers returned, amplified, desperate. "Help me!" The plea echoed off the stone walls. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the fragile papers, a flicker of movement in the periphery. Turning, I saw her, a spectral form coalescing in the corner. Lenora. Her face was drawn, her eyes vast pools of sorrow. She drifted towards me, soundless on the concrete. I retreated instinctively. "What is it you seek?" The question trembled on my lips. Her translucent hand reached out, passing through mine like mist. "Uncover the truth," she breathed, the sound barely disturbing the air. "Help me." Understanding dawned. Her essence was tethered here, yearning for resolution. I nodded, the promise forming silently. Her form dissolved, the oppressive weight in the air lifting slightly. The basement door clicked open. I fled upwards, propelled by a newfound purpose. The ensuing weeks became a pilgrimage into the past. I haunted the Havenwood Library archives, immersing myself in brittle newspaper columns and dusty public records, seeking traces of Lenora Thorne's vanishing. Scant details emerged, whispers of a suspicious vehicle near the farm the night she disappeared, a case grown cold with indifference. Convinced the house held more keys, I returned one evening as twilight bled across the fields. The basement awaited, tense and expectant. I revisited the chest, probing its shadowed corners, tucked behind rusted implements, a hidden recess. Inside, a small dust-caked journal. Elias Thorne's hand, tight and angular, filled the pages. He wrote of encroaching paranoia, of unseen watchers, of a trust eroded. The final entry, penned in frantic haste, spoke of Lenora's disappearance, his own powerlessness, his consuming fear. Determination solidified within me. Someone knew more. I sought out Havenwood's elders, those whose memories stretched back decades. Agnes Holloway, her eyes sharp despite her years, recalled Elias arguing fiercely with a neighbor, Silas Croft, near the time Lenora vanished. Silas now resided in a neighboring town. I found him weathered by time, his face a map of unspoken regrets. Cautiously, I presented the journal, explained my connection to the house. Recognition flared in his eyes, followed by a profound sadness. "Elias, a decent man, burdened," Silas murmured, his voice thick. "But Lenora, she carried secrets too. They dreamt of leaving, starting anew. That night, it spiraled. I never intended, but she was just gone. He offered no more, shaking his head, claiming the details were lost to the fog of years. Though the picture remained incomplete, the truth felt closer. Back at the farmhouse, Lenora's presence felt less like a haunting, more like an urging. I resolved to offer what peace I could. In the basement, I arranged candles, placing the letters and journal at their center. Softly, I recounted her story, articulating my desire to help her find release. As I spoke, the air grew colder, the whispers swelled, then coalesced. Lenora appeared, clearer now, her form less spectral, more substantial. "Thank you," she whispered, the words imbued with profound relief. The basement door swung open wide, and the lingering chill, the oppressive weight, dissipated like morning mist. A quiet sense of accomplishment settled over me. Leaving the house that night, I felt a palpable shift. The Thorn place no longer felt haunted, but hallowed. In the weeks that followed, the strange phenomena ceased entirely. The whispers fell silent. Lenora's presence lingered only as a gentle memory, not a source of dread. I poured myself into the renovation, breathing life back into the structure, fulfilling a dream Elias and Lenora never realized. One evening, tidying the main room, I noticed the family photograph, rescued from obscurity, now cleaned and resting proudly on the mantelpiece. A warmth spread through me. She was at rest. The farmhouse, once a vessel of secrets and sorrow, was becoming a repository of hope. Looking back, it felt as though the house itself had chosen me, tasked me with untangling its sorrowful past. Helping Lenora had not only brought closure to her story, but had given my own life unexpected direction. The farmhouse stood, a bridge between then and now, its history interwoven with my present. Months the restoration took, yet I never felt truly alone. Faint echoes remained, a phantom footfall, a sigh on the breeze, but they were no longer intrusions, merely whispers of time, reminders of the journey. I learned reverence for the past, understanding that while some secrets demand exposure, others earn their quiet rest. The old Thorn place transformed into a sanctuary of healing. Standing on the porch as dusk painted the fields in strokes of lavender and gold, a deep peace settled within me. The farmhouse, once defined by mystery and fear, now breathed with life, ready for new stories to unfold within its resurrected walls. The secrets were quieted, not erased, guiding me now, not haunting me, toward whatever lay beyond the horizon. The woods held their breath when I first discerned it. Late sun slanted through the canopy, dust motes performing a silent ballet in the beams. 4 of us, Elias, Silas, Reese, and I, had paused on the serpentine trail, lungs pleasantly burning, drawn deep into this unnamed wilderness by whispers of tranquility and vistas untouched. Hemlock and fir pressed close, a dense, ancient congregation. Beneath our boots, dry leaves whispered secrets with every phantom gust, a place palpably untrodden. Catching my breath, hands braced on my knees, my gaze drifted upward. There, piercing the jagged silhouette of the pines, a luminescence. Small from this distance, perhaps, yet intensely white, a detached bead of brilliance floating just above the canopy. It wasn't static. It pulsed with erratic motion, tiny, sharp vectors. Left, right, a sudden ascent, a pause, then another displacement, like a nerve twitching in the sky's vast muscle. Silence. I strained my ears past my own ragged breathing, past Silas shifting his weight on the packed earth, scattering pebbles. Nothing. No hum, no whisper of machinery, only the sigh of the wind high above. Sweat slicked my brow as I gestured, my voice hushed. Up there. Elias narrowed his eyes, shielding them against the glare. Reflection? Distant aircraft? I shook my head, the conviction solidifying in my gut. The dance was too deliberate, too aberrant. It flickered between branches, a stark gleam against the deepening azure. Reese fumbled for his phone, aiming its dark eye skyward. A frustrated exhalation. No signal, just a jittery speck on the screen. He pocketed the device, though the line of his jaw remained tight. We all felt it then, a prickle of profound wrongness scaling our spines. Miles from anywhere, unseen by another soul all day. If it was a drone, its operator was as spectral and silent as the machine itself. We pressed onward, the promise of a streamside camp miles ahead, pulling us forward like a lodestone. Our pace found a rhythm born of unease, but our eyes kept straying left, seeking that luminous anomaly through the latticework of trees. It shadowed us, a phantom escort drifting above the timberline, sometimes swallowed by the dense foliage, leading to a brief, tight hope it was gone, only to reappear further along, sometimes ahead, sometimes lagging with unsettling patience. Its velocity, its utter quietude, these things scraped against the bedrock of reason. No displaced air, no engine's whine. The sun bled lower, painting the sky in bruised violets and oranges, and our earlier camaraderie evaporated, replaced by a taut, shared vigilance. Silas would nudge my arm, a silent point, whenever it winked back into existence. Elias, his patience fraying into anger, finally broke the heavy quiet, cupping his hands around his mouth. Hey! His shout, impotent, was swallowed whole by the vast woods, meeting only profound indifference. The light continued its elusive ballet. Its absences became, perversely, worse than its presence, breeding a knot of anxiety deep in my gut, a parched, metallic feeling behind my tongue. I kept glancing up, half expecting it to be hovering directly overhead, a silent judge. Conversation died, leaving only the metronome of our boots on the trail, and the soft clink and rustle of our gear. Another hour ground away beneath our boots before we emerged into a small, welcome clearing. A scatter of fallen logs, a patch of level earth designated on our map as sanctuary. The stream murmured its secrets somewhere below, down the slope. Coolness seeped into the air as the sky ignited, shifted from fierce orange to a tender, bruised pink. I let my pack slide to the ground, the relief in my shoulders immediate, though my legs throbbed with fatigue. Water soothed my throat, but not the arid apprehension clinging there. My eyes, instinctively, swept the darkening tree line. Empty. The others searched too, a silent, anxious consensus. Maybe it's gone, Elias offered, his voice lacking conviction. Sun's down. Could have been just a glare off something high up. None of us bought it. Its movements had possessed an unnerving, almost sentient intentionality. Yet, lacking any other explanation, we let the heavy silence answer. We erected our shelters with economical movements, each focused on the familiar ritual, a bulwark against the unknown. Stakes driven into yielding earth, nylon unfurled like shed skin, sleeping bags lofted within. Reese coaxed a hesitant blue flame from his stove, the hiss unnaturally loud as he heated rations. Silas remained watchful, his gaze patrolling the encroaching gloom. Elias fussed with his headlamp, adjusting straps, his glances quick and bird-like around the camp. As true dark descended, absolute and profound, beams from our lights sliced the gloom, making the woods feel suddenly intimate, paradoxically claustrophobic. Every scuttle in the leaf litter, every snap of a twig, tightened my nerves like a vice. Dinner was tasteless, ash in my mouth, consumed without appetite, a knot of disquiet lodged deep beneath my ribs. Above, the stars blazed with a remote, cold clarity unknown in the city's perpetual twilight, but my gaze kept searching the black voids between them, waiting. Only the forest's familiar nocturnal chorus answered, the thrum of insects, the sigh of the breeze through the pines, the furtive rustlings of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. We spoke in hushed tones, voices barely disturbing the night. Elias proposed a watch rotation. Just to be sure. No one needed convincing. The spectral light had unsettled us profoundly, a deviation from the comprehensible risks of the wild. This felt directed, personal. I volunteered for the first shift, settling onto a damp log, headlamp extinguished to save power and preserve my night vision, the cold metal of the flashlight heavy in my hand. I listened, tuning my senses to the forest's subtle language. For 30 minutes, only the woods breathed around me. Then it returned, hovering above the trees on the far side of the clearing, the same silent, unwavering point of impossible light. A cold fist clenched in my chest. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, thumbing it on, sending a pale, trembling beam towards the apparition. It remained, unperturbed, executing its slow, soundless oscillations against the backdrop of stars. I moved quietly, stealthily, to Silas's tent, whispering his name through the mesh. He emerged swiftly, took one look towards where I pointed, and went rigid. Soon, Elias and Reese were beside us, blinking away sleep, their own lights joining mine, probing the darkness fruitlessly. We stood clustered, mute witnesses, bound by a shared, inexplicable dread. I felt the fine hairs rise on my forearms, my heart accelerating against my ribs, breath catching high in my chest. The light dipped behind the trees, vanished for heartbeats, then surfaced again moments later, diametrically opposite its last position. It had circled us. Reese, his voice rough with sleep and fear, shouted into the void, "Who's there? What is it you want?" Silence answered, only silence, vast and indifferent. We debated using Silas's high lumen torch, a desperate impulse to force clarity. He retrieved it, its beam cutting a potent swathe through the night, illuminating leaves and bark in stark, momentary detail. But the source of the otherworldly glow remained elusive, perpetually obscured, or just beyond the limits of illumination. After a tense minute under the spotlight's glare, the light simply winked out. Silas swore softly, a harsh sound in the quiet. Reese spat onto the dark earth, rubbing his arms against a chill that wasn't entirely from the night air. We conferred in urgent, sibilant whispers. Fleeing now, stumbling through unfamiliar terrain by the weak throw of our headlamps, seemed a greater folly than staying. We were competent hikers, but not equipped for a panicked night retreat into the black unknown. Dawn. We'd wait for dawn, pack swiftly, and retrace our steps with purpose. Staying another night under that silent scrutiny was unthinkable. The strain of being observed by this silent enigma was corrosive, fraying us from the inside out. We lingered a while longer, sweeping the perimeter with our beams like nervous searchlights, but the light did not reappear. Eventually, bone-deep exhaustion outweighed vigilance. Back in our tents, we agreed to maintain a staggered watch through the remaining hours of darkness. I burrowed into my sleeping bag, the nylon cool against my skin, but sleep was a skittish creature, easily startled. My mind relentlessly projected images of that bright, impossibly quiet dot darting through the blackness, defying physics and reason. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes, trying to force calm, to quell the rising tide of unease. Sleep eventually claimed me, thin and restless, a shallow dive into oblivion, until Silas's hand was on my shoulder, shaking me awake in the deep, cold stillness of pre-dawn. "It was back," he breathed, his voice tight with suppressed alarm. I scrambled out, the cold air a shock, rubbing sleep from my eyes. He pointed towards the dense, unreadable wall of trees. Nothing, just impenetrable shadow, layered upon shadow. "Circling," he insisted, his voice low but certain. "Just now. Slow." I didn't doubt him. We stood there for long minutes, piercing the darkness with our lights, catching only the ephemeral glint of dew on unseen leaves, the rough texture of bark. Futile. After a long, fruitless vigil, shivering in the damp air, I retreated to the relative warmth of my tent. Silas remained outside a short while longer, a solitary watchman, before finally seeking shelter himself. Gray morning light filtered through the canvas, revealing a world washed in monochrome. My back protested as I emerged into the chill air. Reese, eyes shadowed with fatigue, coaxed steam from a pot over the guttering stove. Elias sat slumped on a log, raking fingers through his disheveled hair. Silas was already rolling his sleeping pad with brisk, purposeful efficiency. The unspoken consensus was deafening. Escape. Now. I forced down a dry energy bar and gulped the bitter, muddy coffee, needing its heat more than its taste. We broke camp with minimal talk, movements economical, and driven by a singular urge. In the impartial light of day, the forest reassumed its mundane guise: trees, earth, decaying leaves, shafts of pale sun. No trace of the nocturnal visitor remained. We struck the trail heading back, the path winding narrowly through the dense timber. The steady rhythm of our boots on the packed earth, the crunch of gravel, was the only sound for long stretches. Yet our eyes constantly flickered towards the canopy, scanning the gaps between branches. Nothing. I focused on the mechanics of walking, on the in and out of breath, willing the miles away beneath my feet. Sweat trickled beneath my pack straps. A dull, persistent ache settled deep in my thighs. This trek, conceived in pursuit of beauty and solitude, had devolved into an exercise in grim endurance, a flight from something ancient and unknown. Elias cast frequent, jerky glances over his shoulder. Silas scanned the sky habitually, hand shielding his eyes even when the canopy was thickest. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. The air, thick with the scent of pine and damp loam, felt heavy, charged. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by our passage and the occasional sharp cry of an unseen bird. I tried to empty my mind, focusing on the repetition, counting footfalls against the dirt. Around noon, the trail broadened slightly, offering a brief respite near a tumble of mossy rocks. We consulted our maps, still hours from the ranger station and the sanctuary of the car. Jerky and water were consumed mechanically. My throat felt constricted, appetite utterly absent, but I chewed and swallowed, needing the fuel. Reese's gaze, like mine, continued its restless patrol of the surrounding woods. The midday sun glared, washing out the sky, making it hard to see details. Would it return in this brightness? A part of me prayed not, while another, colder part, dreaded its inevitable reappearance. We pushed on. Perhaps an hour later, a flicker, high and to the right, caught at the periphery of my vision, a flash of intense white against the washed-out blue. I stopped dead, breath held, staring. The others halted behind me, sensing the change. It was there, poised above a distant ridge, winking intermittently as if playing hide-and-seek among the unseen peaks and branches. My pulse leapt, a frantic bird against my ribs. Sweat bloomed anew on my palms, tension seizing my shoulders and neck. I didn't speak, couldn't speak, just pointed a trembling finger. They saw it, a low, guttural curse from Elias. Silas's jaw hardened, his knuckles white on his trekking pole. Reese gave a slow, defeated shake of his head, phone already in hand, aimed uselessly towards the phenomenon, another futile attempt to capture the uncapturable. We stood frozen for a long moment, paralyzed by uncertainty and a resurgence of fear. It maintained its distance, a silent, patient sentinel pacing us, mirroring our course along the hidden contours of the land. When we resumed walking, forcing stiff legs into motion, it moved in concert, always partially obscured, a persistent, unnerving presence at the very edge of perception. I tried quickening my pace to a trot, heart pounding. It kept effortlessly abreast in the distance. I slowed. It matched me. The sensation of being studied, catalogued, dissected by an unseen intelligence was overwhelming. My stomach twisted into a cold knot. I licked dry lips, tasting salt and fear. Tightening my pack straps became a small, anchoring ritual as I tried desperately to will it out of my awareness, to focus only on the path ahead. Then, as abruptly and inexplicably as it had appeared, it was gone again. We trudged onward, each footfall heavier than the last, landing with dull thuds on the trail. The silence between us thickened, freighted now with exhaustion and the residue of terror. I saw Silas's fists were clenched, his gaze fixed forward. Elias shook his head, almost imperceptibly, repeatedly, as if trying to dislodge a persistent thought. Reese rubbed the back of his neck compulsively, leaving angry red marks on his skin. My focus narrowed to the single, burning objective. Out. Just get out. The forest blurred past, unchanging, yet subtly signaling our progress as the trees began to thin, admitting more light. A familiar bend, a weathered signpost half swallowed by ferns, a rusted metal bench near a small trash bin, landmarks confirming our agonizingly slow approach. Maybe 30 minutes more to the station. The sun beat down, warm on the back of my neck. One final glance back over my shoulder revealed only trees and sky, innocent and vast. It seemed truly gone this time, vanished into the ether. Relief washed over me. cool but incomplete, leaving behind a residue of deep, vibrating unease. I craved walls, solid structures, the murmur of indifferent human voices, the mundane safety of civilization. We reached the ranger station clearing in the late afternoon sun, walking with leaden legs directly to the dusty lot where our vehicle waited, an island of normalcy. Elias turned the key, the engine rumbling to life, a reassuringly familiar sound in the unnerving quiet. Doors slammed shut, sealing us inside, cocooning us. No one spoke of what we had witnessed, of the light in the trees. The consensus was tacit, absolute. Leave it here, in the silent, watchful woods. As we pulled away, gravel crunching under the tires, a measure of tension finally eased from my shoulders, but the image remained burned onto the back of my eyelids. That silent, luminous watcher, moving with impossible grace. Had others seen it? Would they believe it? We never asked, never filed a report. How could we articulate the inexplicable, face the calm, rational skepticism? We drove towards home, towards the illusion of forgetfulness. Later, texts were exchanged, brief check-ins deliberately devoid of substance. We were content, perhaps desperate, to let it fade into the realm of bad dreams. Yet, the memory persists, visceral and sharp, the suffocating dryness in my throat, the frantic hammering of my heart against my ribs, the cold sweat tracing a path down my spine as I looked up and saw that impossible light tracking us, pacing us through the ancient trees. It is etched within me now, a thing I cannot unsee, and pray with every fiber of my being never to encounter again.